Okay, so today this is the second part of the video on building your basic helmet design, and we're going to be putting in the inside pieces to fill this in so we have a solid helmet around our whole head. Wanted to thank all the people for all the comments. The feedback I got is great. Some great questions coming up. I'm going to do some more videos to address some of those questions. Okay, so these are kind of basic tools. You know, I've got my steel rule over here, still using that for things. I got my scissors, just some good old Fiskars scissors. They cut really well. I've got my mallet. You always need your mallet, of course. I've got this wooden pestle for forming my helmet piece. I've got my marker for marking my lines on my for my holes. I've got this one you can actually cut with. I've got my buffing tool. I've got a pencil. I've got an awl, which is, you'll see what I'm using that for. I've got my regular size punch, mini punch, that is just the right size for my rivets to go through and stay in. And then I've got my rivet setter, and we're going to use all these things. And got the marker, because I'm going to use that for marking my pieces so I know which piece goes back to where it's supposed to go. Of course, we got our steel pot here. You know, that's an optional thing. I've got a big tub here for when I put my pieces in and let them soak in some hot water. And those are the basic tools I'm going to need for this project. Now to the pieces that we're going to wet form. Okay, as you can see, I've got them set up in the order that they were cut out. So I went ahead and I took my Sharpie and I marked the number 1 on this, and we're going to go clockwise, number 2, and then number 3, and then number 4. And I'm going to mark on the inside of the helmet once I get these wet formed and pushed in and clamped in. I'm going to mark those numbers where they're supposed to be, and then I'm going to make specific marks to line up everything in case things move after I've started marking my holes. Now you might ask, hey, why don't you just do a pattern so you can just mark the holes all the same all the time? Well, yeah, I tried that, and I just ended up having to repunch holes and had numerous holes where I didn't want them. So I've since decided that you have to actually put the pieces in and mark them specifically as they're in there. Otherwise, there's different size. Something happens where things get a little changed, so you can try that if you want, but I don't recommend it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our tub here, and we're going to go into the workroom where I've got a faucet with hot water, and I'm going to soak these pieces for a little while. Okay, so we got our pieces wet. I'm just going to take our helmet here, and let's see, how was that? We got that. So number 1's going to be over there. Right. Okay. So number 1's going to be here. Where's my number 1? I'm going to put it down that way, just like that. I'm just smashing it in with my fist right now. You know, if you don't have a helmet, you can actually put this on the round part of your head and kind of form it. That actually works a little, you know, so you can do that too. Don't be afraid to mash it on your head. It won't hurt you. There's number 2. We're going to put it in. Right there. Wait, number 2 goes here. This. Actually counterclockwise because it's upside down. Just putting them in so they fit together. Just smashed them in with my hand here. And I'm going to come in with my piece of wood and really form them into the helmet. Okay, so it's going to go like this. We're going to flip our helmet over. pull our pieces out. And we want to be sure that we're not going beyond the center mark where the other piece is going to meet up with it. I like to kind of line it up on the same line as this here, because usually our holes are just about there, and you're going to be at the center mark there. So kind of line it up. You have to be careful over here not to miss your holes up here on these parts here, otherwise you'll be right where you need. So don't go too far. These holes here are going to be really close to the edge here, so we don't want to go. We want to make sure we got those on. All right, I'm just going to throw a clamp on there. One clamp for now. And we're going to come in with piece number 2. I'm going to throw it in there. Now, in lieu of clamps like this, you can use clothespins. All right, and I think I'm probably going to go ahead and get the helmet wet, the rest of the helmet wet, before I actually mark my holes. That way I can actually form these a little better into place. So we're just placing this, but we haven't marked anything or punched any holes yet, so we're still okay. This needs to go up some more. Give us room on this other side. A little bit tricky to get them all fitted in once you get down to the last ones here. I'd have to reshift some. You don't want to miss the holes on the edge there. Okay, that one needs to go up some more, it looks like. Okay, so we're going to try and come in and form this a little bit. See how we've still got some kind of a little bit of gaps there. That's why I'm thinking I might go ahead and wet down the top of the helmet some, and then come back and form it in a little better. I've wet down the whole thing here a little bit again, and I've pushed it into the steel pot for some extra forming with the inside pieces inserted. And that's going to help me get a better, more precise marking on everything. And then it's going to look a lot nicer. I'm just using my fist right now to push stuff in. Hopefully I'm not going to shift them too much here to move them off the marks. Alright, now let's come in with our pestle, and I want them to be formed nicely to the helmet piece, so they look like they're made for it, because they are. If you don't do this, you're going to end up with gaps and buckles and wrinkles, and sometimes you still do, just because when you start pressing the leather together and it wants to go one way, and one piece wants to go one way and the other piece goes another, you're going to have some wrinkling and stuff. It's not desirable. Now, we're going to carefully pull this out of here. And actually, before we pull it out, I like the position everything's in here, so I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm just going to make a mark where I've got stuff, and that's going to help me keep stuff in place and then put it back together in place. And I'm going to mark 3, 4, 1, 2, and no worries if you're worried about numbers, you can die over them later. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and pull this out. Let's go ahead and clamp these back down into place before we go messing around. Okay, so we're going to turn it around, and we're carefully going to mark the holes that we can. And I'm using my awl because that actually works better than the pencil. I'm hoping I don't lose my... Ooh, that one's really close to the edge. I don't like that. But all the other ones around it are on pretty good. So as you see, I'm just going around the whole thing. I'm not going to take anything off until I've got all my holes marked. So I'm going to go try and go straight down. I'm pressing the pieces together ahead of time. Whoop, there, I'm missing. That one's going all the way through. That's because I got repositioned here. Alright, now pull that back down. Okay, so ran into a little issue. I'm going to have to move these pieces around. And this, I believe I'm going to put number 4 where number 3 is. So what I'm doing is I'm switching number 3 and number 4 around. And hopefully I'm going to catch these holes a little better with the leather. And it really didn't change the shape any because they're about the same shape already. Just barely catching it even with the shift. Well, we'll catch the leather a little bit at least. Okay, so now I've got my holes marked, and I'm going to go ahead and punch the holes. I'm not too worried about losing the shape here. You know, we may get a little flattened out, but I am kind of hanging it off the edge so I don't lose my shape completely. And we're just commenced to punching. There's one of those holes I was talking about. It's just right next to the edge, but it's just enough for the rivet to grab onto. So I'm not that unhappy with it. Okay. So now that we've got our holes punched, we're going to place our pieces back in their appropriate spots, and we're going to put the rivets in and put the caps on, and then I'll show you how I set those rivets. Okay, so before we put our pieces in, I'm going to set these rivets on the side because they're actually going to be kind of covered up, and I don't want to have to deal with any problems later on. So we're going to set these rivets. I just have a little thing I made here. I've just bent a hunk of steel on top of a 2x2 piece that I've got in my anvil here, my vise grip, and this is how I'm going to set them. It's just right on top of there. Now, as you can see, creates some wrinkles a little bit, so that's why I like to have it wet when I'm doing this, so that I can form it a little more after it, so we can smooth off those edges. Before we put these pieces on, I also like to cut this corner off because that's kind of where your ear is going to go, and it'll give your ear a little room to. And this piece isn't connected to anything, so we don't really care that much if it's on or off. So I'm just going to take this piece here. I'm going to flip it around. Get it similar size, boom. Mark it with my pencil. Cut it off. Remember, we switched 3 and 4 because I had to make them fit a little better to I was missing the leather for this hole right here. So just switching them around actually gave me a little more bite. Okay, so now we're going to take our rivets and we're going to start setting our pieces in there. And I just find one hole that I can get lined up. I might take my awl here and push it on through. So you can use the awl to open up your holes a little bit because they closed up when I soaked it in water. So we're going to go around and we're going to put in the rivets. We're going to line up the holes with our awl, put the rivets in. Okay, so I've got the front 2 plates on, as you can see, and they're just the rivets are just popped in there. And by the way, I'm using large double cap rivets, nickel plated steel, and that's because these are almost a 1/4 inch thick, these pieces of leather, and you need that big a rivet to go through there. And what I'm doing now is I'm going around and I'm pressing with my fingers. I'm trying to mold the pieces together so that I won't get any weird wrinkling, or I'll minimize the amount of weird wrinkling I get when I start setting the rivets, because the leather's workable and pliable and will bend when I start setting the rivets, and then I'll have to rework this again after I've set the rivets. So we're going to go over to our anvil here and set these rivets. I like to do this standing up because I can get a better angle when I'm setting it. And you want to set them firmly. And you can probably see there's already where it's denting in where I've set the rivet. And we're going to come back and we're going to fix that as much as we can after we've set the rivets. Get that lined up on there. Oh, there that one popped off because it... Let me get another cap. Got one right here. So you can see where it's wrinkling and we're deforming the leather when we're setting the rivets. So I'm going to have to, that's why I want my leather to be somewhat pliable. That's why we wet it down before doing all of this. Let's see, am I lined up? Looks like it. Oh, there went another cap. Fortunately, it fell right there, and that will happen. That's only because, you know, there's these rivets just go through this, and that's another reason I like the leather to be pliable, because it does make the leather give a little bit and let my rivet set even better. Okay, so here I've got this side with the rivets set, and you see how we've got the wrinkles here. So we're going to go and we're going to try and fix that with our fingers and our pestle. I'm just going to press in there, trying to mold it back into a seamless sort of looking thing. Okay, I'm going to get this buffing tool and kind of buff it. See if that'll help. It usually does kind of help kind of mold it in together. Let's get the right angle on here. And the idea is here is I'm trying to smooth out the bumpiness that was created when I set these rivets, because I don't like the way that looks. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to try and smooth it out a little more after that. That's looking pretty good. I mean, there's a little bit of bumpiness still, and we'll just keep working it as we go. But you get the idea. We're going to smooth that out as much as we can, so it looks like, and it will be almost watertight because you've got it so smooth together. So that's what we're looking for. We're going to go around. We're going to set the rest of the rivets. We're going to put the other pieces in, finish this cap off. On the next video, we're going to show how to attach the back plates of the samurai armor, the samurai pieces that go around the back. We're going to talk about making a face mask or mempo and the plates of armor that go on that, and we'll look at some of the design patterns and stuff. But you get the idea. This is how we're going to do the other 3 plates in the top piece, and we're going to smooth them off as much as we can. We'll keep pressing that and working it till it looks nice and smooth, especially on the front. But we want it to look good all the way around. And we're going to talk about making a crest coming up off of here. The medete is what it's called. And just some other things about samurai helmets. Just wanted to take this time to thank all the new subscribers. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more, subscribe. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, please feel free to write down in the comments section. Also, there's a list of tools and materials down below and a link to the first video, so you want to make some leather armor. All right, until next time.